You cannot see it. All right, cool. So, well, hi everyone. Welcome for another panel session. We wanted to make it a little bit more interactive, so we invited more people to the stage, specifically some executive leaders here that are driving some very cool technologies, cool projects that are very connected to the Filecoin ecosystem that we wanted to have a conversation with today. So, gentlemen, thank you for joining. Let me just go around the table and ask each one of you to introduce yourself and maybe talk a little bit in a very short way what your project is all about. And let's start with Konstantin.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you a lot. It's a great pleasure to be here. My name is Konstantin. I'm Chief Strategy Officer at Titan Network. We're building a new incentive layer for global idle resources. What we allow our community to do is we aggregate storage, bandwidth, and compute from idle devices or edge devices all across the globe, and then we bundle them together to provide cloud services on demand. I think that's where we are really coming together with ecosystem partners like Filecoin, enabling not only general DePIN Compute and Storage use cases, but really bridging the larger ecosystem. We have abundance of devices across the globe, and using those resources by itself allow us to build the largest DePIN network possible. And with largest DePIN network possible, we're able to bring more and more community to use the power of DePIN ecosystem. And that's why we're here.
Awesome. Thank you. Greg?
My name is Greg Osuri. I'm the CEO for Overclock and the creators of Akash Network. Akash is the world's first open source decentralized supercloud. The idea of a supercloud is to essentially aggregate any cloud capable compute and the resources to give a unified interface to access these resources, right? Akash, with the focus on accelerated compute now, Akash is one of the few places where you can get high density GPUs such as A100s and H100s in an on-demand manner, which is impossible to get in your traditional means, right? And the reason is, open source and permissionless software can go places where typical cloud cannot go, right? And those places tend to be people with GPUs that are not using them all the time. So Akash now has incredible users. You just heard from Tina from Venice, who's one of her beloved users and use cases, and is powering most of the decentralized compute, and also is creeping into the non-decentralized, decentralized AI use cases, but also like non-decentralized systems like Brev.dev or News Research or companies like University of Texas, and a lot of universities use Akash now, which we feel very proud for.
Oh, thank you. Harry?
Harry Grieve, co-founder of Gensyn. We're a machine learning compute protocol with a focus on two specific areas. The first is hard verification, so providing a proof that a machine learning engineer can trust that the machine learning graph that he sent to a device has been executed as requested. And secondly, optimally sharding machine learning model training runs across our network. Both of those problems are quite hard for technical reasons. On the former problem, the non-determinism inherent in most machine learning training makes it difficult to verify. And secondly, on the kind of training optimization side, typically you have a fairly difficult optimization problem between communication overhead and compute and heterogeneous devices. So it's difficult to know kind of ex ante how to optimally split a graph across the network. We have both of those problems being solved, and we're launching next year.
Awesome. Thank you, Harry. Charles?
Hi, I'm Charles from Swan Chain, so I'm the founder of Swan Chain. So we were OG of Filecoin ecosystem. We started building the storage solution at the beginning, and since 2 years ago, we started building the computing over data. So now we are building a layer 2 of Ethereum for AI computing suite. So we're offering the IPFS storage, archive on Filecoin, and also we have deployed instance worldwide. We have over 2,000 computing providers on the worldwide with over 1,000 GPUs available for people doing the computing needs. And also we have a Web3 version of Hugging Face called Lagrange DAO, which will help people easily to deploy their models using the IPFS and Filecoin archive technologies, persistent your data, make it we're building a temp-proof storage engine to enable you have the models, computing needs, and everything you need about decentralized computing in one suite. So this is what we are doing. And we just launching the mainnet recently and finished the testnet with over 2,000 people building thousands of models on top of the chain. And very interesting to be here and hearing about colleagues working together.
That's awesome. So, I mean, 4 different companies, 4 different technology stacks, all enabling some form of new workloads that are really leveraging decentralized infrastructure. And would love to hear from each one of you a little bit more about what trends you're seeing. Like, if you can talk a little bit more about use cases, and because every stack is sort of like focusing slightly different on different use cases. And maybe Konstantin, can you tell us a little bit more about how Titan networks? Because you kind of talked about how many nodes you have, but like, what use cases are you seeing? Where do you see the adoption right now?
Totally. And just to give you a glimpse of a highlight, while we're focusing on the edge devices, it really brings us a new granularity of DePIN network, where now not every single computer or server or cluster can be participant of such a network, but every single edge device, like a mobile device, my personal device, device of my friend, or maybe if I have multiple devices, I can connect multiple of them and be rewarded for the resources I'm contributing. So what Titan Network is essentially doing is empowering user ownership and this promise of DePIN, where you are rewarded for the resources that you have, to the ultimate potential that every person can participate. And while we're onboarding this amount of edge devices and unique users that were not participants of the DePIN networks before, we also see those new use cases where now you can have a granularity of the network, whether that's compute, cloud, or service provision on the last mile, like last mile delivery of service and content, where it could be on a fog level or on a network device as close to person, as close to human being as possible. Having the access to these nodes on edge devices, on your friend's phone or your phone, this was really never possible before. And even with traditional cloud services, you still are bonded to the data center that you have nearby. And maybe it's not in your city, but a nearby city, or maybe a nearby country even. That's where edge devices start to become more and more important for the DePIN networks of the future, and I'm more than happy to share those information later to the talk that I'll be giving today here. This power of edge devices for us is this new use cases that we can do last mile content and delivery services on top of existing infrastructure that traditional cloud providers give. And that's where we see a lot of more collaboration from community and a lot of more applications that could be built that only dependent or needed for a specific region rather than deploy it all across the space and enable it across the whole community. This granularity and building for the users where they are is something that we haven't seen before possible, and now it's enabled by edge devices on the Titan network.
Yeah, that's great. So basically, locality, the fact that you have more local access or reach, essentially, right, than the cloud providers. The second, I mean, you mentioned you had a user that was very interested or is using your network because of the velocity or of IPs that they have access to. Can you talk a little bit more about that specific use case?
Totally. Well, the other cool thing, when you start working with community, when you're really onboarding, right now Titan Network has approximately 500,000 commuting users, so edge devices across the globe. You get at the same time with onboarding so many users, a lot of residential IP addresses which belong to the people who have actual content identifiers, and that allows new use cases as well from a perspective of data scraping, marketing solutions. All that requires a unique user identity could be built on top of Titan Network, and therefore providing access and more value to user-created identities because it's coming from their residential IP addresses. Their searches are a little bit altered by how the traditional cloud works. And in integrating all of that as features for the new customers, for the new builders on top of Titan Network, is something that was never possible before because you cannot really that easily access to 500,000 people across the globe. And having this like seamless integration with single app where user just commits their resources and gets rewarded when their resources is used is something that we were really struggling as a DePIN ecosystem before because it's super hard to use most of the traditional infrastructure, but reducing this barrier and unlocking an average user to be part of the network is something that we see as a huge trend going into the future.
That's very interesting, yeah. So basically you can help with collecting data sets out there in a much easier distributed way and then feed them into Akash, for example, in Swan.
Exactly,
And Gensyn, where the machine learning training is done.
Yeah,
This
and
is great.
that is all
Fantastic.
empowered by users, by us who owning the devices. That's what
And
we
the
should
users
strive
get
for.
compensated
Exactly.
for it. That's awesome. 500,000. Wow, that's a lot. Greg, you had some real awesome use cases. You talked about a few, like BrevDef and some others. Can you talk a little bit more? Because these are, in my opinion, like enterprise-grade users, right, that are actually leveraging your stack.
Yeah, so Akash, we broad set of use cases in general purpose cloud, but with a focus on accelerated compute. I mean, these days, AI is the main driving force, and the demand and supply is really what is giving the Akash the attention it's getting right now. Mainly because we're able to offer high density, right, H100s or A100s, which are very, very hard to get in your traditional cloud. So we have both traditional, decentralized AI use cases where we have Venice.ai, which co-founded by Eric Voorhees and Tina Baker here. They are private, uncensorship resistant, chat service that's running on Akash, right?
Wow.
So it's amazing that Venice can have uncensored results, and they have guarantees that Akash is not going to shut them down. No one can shut them down, right? And that's an amazing way to demonstrate the power of decentralized networks. And then you have traditional models like News Research, which is one of the top AI teams, right? And I think their model called Hermes, which is like top 25 on Hugging Face. They are using Akash H100s and Akash to do training, right? So there's a notion that decentralized networks are not good for training, but Akash is kind of very granular in the sense that it gives you quite a lot of control on where your workloads can be placed. So you can choose an H100 cluster with SXM5 or InfiniBand, whatever configuration you want to, and get the local power that you need instead of the system choosing where you're supposed to schedule your workloads, right? So you have that lot of control on the user side. And then you have traditional fine-tuning, right? Brev.dev, which is considered to be the one of the best ways to fine-tune your models, right? It is your traditional NVIDIA talks about Brev, and NVIDIA actually was tweeting about Akash, indirectly through Brev, and you could see Akash, going to those use cases. We saw several researchers like Andrew Gao and whatnot training their, the first ever LATAM LLM to be pre-trained was done on Akash, right? So we're seeing incredible new use cases as people find out about Akash. The first disbelief that there is this weird network that can give you GPUs, right? So, but once people use it, like any decentralized network, it's a little hard for people to get the grasp of it because you need to install the wallets, get Akash and all these crazy steps you got to go through. But once you get in, people love it. People love because once you see the value in it, it's we have very low churn essentially.
And you accept fiat as well, right? It's not just tokens.
We don't accept fiat from
No?
a protocol
Okay.
level. I mean, so there is a multi-currency settlement mechanism where you can essentially pay with any IBC-enabled crypto. So now AKT is a primary way to pay, but you can use USDC. IBC-enabled USDC, which is on Cosmos, right? But there are fiat on-ramps, like Brev, for example, when you use, it's a fiat pay based, right? You just pay with a credit card, right? It's a client on top of Akash. Akash natively cannot support fiat because it's a decentralized protocol. But
it's basically handled by Brev themselves.
Right.
They
So
kind
Brev
of
buys
obfuscated.
AKT, and they use AKT internally.
Perfect.
And so Venice also they have the Pro version that accepts fiat. They buy AKT off market, and they use that AKT for deploying, right? So anyone, it's permissionless. Anyone can deploy. There's no one stopping you, right? Anyone can supply. No one's stopping you from providing and using. And that's the power, right? And that's really, and one of the things we talk to Brev teams is why Akash is attractive, because they can go build on AWS or get these deals with get a deal with Google or whatever and get the GPUs. But there's a common notion that every time AWS sees a successful business, they're going to replicate it. They've done that all the time.
Really?
Oh yeah, that's how AWS grows, right? And they'll give you an option. You either sell to us or we'll cut you out. Right? That happened with Firebase, Google. Think about it. There's so many cases you see in the past. The moment a product reaches success that is based on platform, you get either acquisition or killing the product, right? And Akash can't do that. So Brev is very confident that I cannot build. No one can pull the plug when you invest and actually build on the systems, even though it might be a little harder in the beginning because early stages, but the investment actually speaks volumes, right? And we're seeing that mainstream adoption happening for Akash, which is amazing. We have more non-crypto users than crypto users now.
Wow, that's impressive. I mean, like, made some really good comments there. Like, we forget how much innovation is stifled by us being locked in with the APIs and the infrastructure that the cloud providers are providing today. And we've gotten so used to it because it's so easy, swipe a card, but at the same time they control not just your data sets, but also a little bit your ability to innovate. That's
Yeah, remember Twitter famously they had an open API and then they shut down the API and they removed all these, like this tweet, there's so many tools that were built on top of Twitter. Twitter all gone into one company, right? So that happens all the time and we don't talk about that much.
Wow. Harry, tell us a bit more about Gensyn, because Gensyn, it sounds like you're really zooming in on the machine learning models, how to really decentralize that, optimize it. What are you seeing, and what demand signals are you getting from the market there?
Yeah, I'd say when we look at the kind of use cases, there's kind of two bets we're making. The first is a very, very high scale. So if you're training across, say, 10,000 plus devices simultaneously, there needs to be very hard verification. And by when I say hard verification, I mean the verification is cryptographically provable, it's game theoretically sound, and it's difficult to kind of Sybil attack or spoof. That's difficult for a variety of reasons. One of them is the non-determinism thing I mentioned. The other one is just if you want to do a kind of replication system and you do it naively, the verification proofs get very expensive. So it becomes kind of prohibitive for people to use the platform. So one of our focuses is on providing super low cost but scalable verification, and that enables more devices to attach to the network and train simultaneously. And then the second kind of core use case we have is we think that the current kind of paradigm in which models are being pre-trained, where essentially it's done from a hardware perspective first. It's if you're a kind of company training a large model, you're like, what devices can I get access to? How much money do I have to kind of train across the devices? And then downstream from that, you begin to make architecture decisions about, how you kind of fit the model around the devices. We think that there'll be a kind of flippening of that, where instead of it being kind of like, I have this limited set of devices, it'll be I can access any device with the caveat that it's decentralized and thus kind of, more bandwidth constrained, more lower latency, higher latency. And then the question is, how do you optimally kind of train large models across those networks of devices? Of course, you need the verification guarantee, otherwise it all kind of falls apart, which is why we focus on that. So right now, one of the kind of core things that we want to provide users when we launch is the ability to kind of parallelize models in an optimal way across lots of devices simultaneously. You see kind of early examples of that today. So for example, in Akash, you can do kind of fine tuning where you split between different GPUs, et cetera. Right. But we kind of are looking, even further ahead than that and thinking, how can you train across, thousands of devices and create, user-owned enormous models.
Parallelize it. So, and the hardware right now, is that provided by the community, or like, do you provide it yourself? Like, what's the strategy with Gensyn there?
So we have, for our kind of early launches next year, we have a variety of institutional and also just individual contributors who want to attach hardware to the network. I think for our internal testing, we test it across our own hardware. So we have a kind of internal version of a network spun up currently on our own hardware. Although I think like one of the kind of things is, given the financial value at stake, when you do these things, you want to kind of slowly decentralize it and open it up and not rush something out. I think in our space, like particularly this year, there have been a lot of kind of entrants who have sort of rushed to market really quickly, and it's kind of, some of them are kind of like blowing up, and it's been, quite like dramatic on like Twitter and stuff like that. I see a lot of smiles. But like, so we're definitely indexing kind of against that. Some could say we're probably like indexed too far against that, and we're a bit kind of like too kind of deep on it, but
I'm sure it's aligned with the customers you're going after. You want something that's solid first, that works, before you progressively decentralize, right?
Yeah, basically that's the idea. And I think also the two kind of bets we make are, one, verification is important. Some people say that, for example, because we only do training, some people look at inference and they say, well, you know, verification for inference doesn't really matter because if I've got a kind of model which is providing me with generative output and I kind of like trust the output, like what you see is what you get, then, you know, if I just trust it, then I don't need the verification. Like I'm the verification.
Yeah.
Whereas with training, you can't really look at
totally different level.
Yeah, so you can't like look at like a kind of 7 billion parameters like in floating point and be like, yeah, that looks that looks right. Wow. So it has to kind of, you know, be treated differently.
Yeah, it's right. Yeah, because right now people told me, I mean, training will never be decentralized. I mean, I disagree with that because you're going after that market, and I think it's where a lot of opportunity is because that's where all the data sets are. That's where all the you know opportunity is to like really enable all these data sets that are currently locked into either on-premises or public clouds even in a lot of cases to really like come online and be actually utilized at a much lower cost with these. Yeah, very cool. Any customers that you can pull out? You know, is there any trends that you're seeing? Like, I assume research. I assume I don't know. What other users are you seeing?
We tend to be heavily indexed towards people in the research space, so people who are doing large model training, and then people who are either cost or scale constrained. Basically, when we think about users in the space, it's like a tetralemma, so it's like a four-way or four-dimension problem where people care about price, they care about scale, they care about kind of speed, and then they care about essentially like generalizability, usability, because sometimes you can get the first free, but you can only do it for certain models. And they're like, oh, well, that's not the model I'm using. It's like a certain architecture or whatever. So we think of basically all customers through that lens.
Nice. Charles, tell us more about, you mentioned Lagrange DAO. You had built your own DAO. You've built a decentralized compute stack. Can you tell us a little bit more about what you're seeing, like users, how many users you have, and why why they're using your stack?
Yeah, basically like, the reason we're building the Lagrange DAO on top of our computing layer, because we saw like, if we take about the history of the AI or large language models development, like they're building the community first, right? So they have the stable diffusions, they have a ChatGPT 3.0, and all those based on sharing and also like improvement. So community is really important. So what do we see nowadays? Like there's lots of GPU providers, like different networks. But however, like how to use those GPU resource is still difficult. So we're building. So we see like we need some tools like similar to Hugging Face, but more on a decentralized level. So what do we see from Hugging Face is like they are using AWS, Google as their computing provider. They trust those cloud providers, but how about those cloud providers? They shut down your data, shut down your access, which we already see it in some regions, like you cannot get access because like the government or any reasons. Like, so we wanted to give the people the access to the large networks, and you have a computing resource, and we have to store the data, right? And the data is becoming one more important things. We see not many people touching that hard part. So you need to have a decentralized gateway of storage, decentralized gateway of computing, and you need to put the storage and the computing together, right? How to building an engine in an auction way. Because remember, now we are computing, people who are doing the computing is not something like you trusted. You don't even know like who is the provider. You don't want, sometimes you don't want to know their name, right? And sometimes like they don't want to provide their name. And you need the payment solutions to cross different regions. You don't rely on the SWIFT payment system. So with all those things together, I think like currently like it's just too difficult for developers who wanted to deploy their models. That's why we're building the Lagrange DAO. So like our developer our engineer just tell me this morning, like, look at Charles, we have over 100,000 spaces has been deployed on our system.
And what is a space?
So the space like is the same as the Hugging Face. The space is you deploy a model. For example, Stable Diffusion V1, V2, V3. You want people can go and try it. You want to run in inference. So and then people want to fork your code to build in their own version. So that is a space.
I see, gotcha.
So with one space is a demo space for your models. For example, like everybody is like who have a first version can deploy on our platform. And then we give you access to the general computing power, and you can make a payment using MetaMask for the different payments because we are building on top of Ethereum as a layer 2. So it's much easier for anybody who has a MetaMask can pay for the computing power, building models, share your knowledges, and in this way, like we can foresee, like in next 2 to 3 years, it will greatly accelerate the massive adoption of decentralized computing. And also another important thing is like the data, right? So lots of people talking about the training, talk about inference, but here we are at the Filecoin ecosystem. Why we need Filecoin? Because we back up our important data on the Filecoin. We know there was a famous project a few months ago. They accidentally lost all their data about the computing information, jobs information, and they cannot get it back, right? So why it cannot get it back? Which means that they're not store data securely or decentralized way, right? You have for example, what are we doing that? We are running our storage gateway based on IPFS, and then we get back up on 200 nodes of the Filecoin. So if one day your data set, your models, is destroyed by whatever reason in one IPFS server, you can always fetch those data from the different Filecoin nodes, and you can aggregate it and rebuild the system entirely. And we give the freedom of the data control to the public, not by some central governance company.
No, that's great. I mean, Hugging Face, you were talking about Hugging Face. Hugging Face went down a couple of months ago, right? Because Llama 3 came out and there was a 45 terabyte data set that was pretty hot and everyone was downloading it. Just to give another example to your point, that even though they're running on an Amazon instance, it doesn't mean that the network bandwidth is available to support all these new users that are interested in running new training models on these data sets. I know we've been talking a lot. This is great, by the way. I love that each one of you has their own perspective and also like kind of attacks the market from a different angle and solves a real problem for real users. Like currently, how do we feel about the adoption in general when it comes to enterprise? I mean, Akash already has enterprise customers, and it sounds like Titan Network is also seeing already some enterprise customers. But feedback I'm getting is like, hey, these are all still proof of concepts. Can you tell a bit more about, very short, like when do you see like more mass adoption happening of the Titan networks? What would it take? Very short, and then we'll just go around the table here.
Yeah, what I really see is while you're building this DePIN network, you still want to have as accessible layers as possible so that the transition, whether it's a cost transition or resources or engineering resources, should be as low as possible for the ecosystem. So our goal with Titan network was exactly to simplify or replicate the processes that you have in traditional space. So we're using the same VM plus container solutions. We're using approach or protocols that Cloudflare use for Docker containers. So all of that gives us the opportunity to say, hey, we're not a new unique solution to which you have learned how to use. Rather, we're already existing, and it is very similar to which stack you're using right now. We're just providing you additional opportunities. And that's, I think, the way, at least for the Titan network, to penetrate the market and really enter the same traditional customers, just providing them new features at the same stack that they're already using.
Gotcha.
That's the way for us to go.
And that will, in your mind, accelerate adoption more to mainstream. Okay.
So to the folks that are skeptical about DePIN or decentralized compute, this is what I got to say, right? Like, first skepticism was there's no product market fit, but it's very clear there's PMF. There are people using it. There are people complaining about it. So every time someone complains about a product, that's called product market fit, right? That's the indication, even though there's no clear definition of what PMF is, right? But really, historically, closed source software tends to go fast, whereas open source software tends to go far. If you think about it, Linux powers about 93.4% of the top 1 million web servers, which is open source, right? That was not the case. It was Unix before. It was Windows NT before, right? But Linux, by the time, really Google kind of made Linux popular in terms of internet servers, but look at where Linux is right now. Look at where internet is. Right? Initially, internet was primarily driven by AOL's closed browser system until an open ecosystem came about, and that went far, right? So the fact that we have product market fit that did not exist a few years ago is a great first step.
That's a good point.
And second is, well, how do you get to the mass scale? Well, that comes through adoption, right? And we are seeing Brevs of the world or amazing software that's being built on these decentralized networks that are easing various problems that we face, which is on-ramp, right? Getting the traditional users to use systems without changing behavior. I think that's cool, but also we have to get into the mode of like getting traditional users using decentralized systems while changing the behavior, and that's the real holy grail. And that tends to be the challenge. Like, how do you really build interfaces that are not slapping a username, password, and a payment rails, but actually giving you the non-custodialness and not, showing the power of that. There's quite a lot of work that's happening with account abstractions and whatnot. We are very excited about this work, but I think we're in that cusp of that massive explosion in terms of usage. And once that, we don't know what that's going to look like. It just takes several iterations, a lot of experimentation, right? But once that happens, you're going to see an exponential growth. I'm very confident, as long as we keep, we keep our heads down and keep working on maintaining that privacy and maintaining that non-custodialness.
Yeah, I agree. I think if you just compare today versus last year, or today versus 3 months or 6 months ago, even, like, is a massive change in just even the word DePIN didn't exist last year, or it was just bubbling up in Singapore, and now it's like a trend. And now people are actually adopting.
To that point, we spent quite a lot of time on the Hill, and I was talking to the chief staffers at one of the strong committees on commerce and trade that has jurisdiction over FTC and whatnot. They know about DePIN, and I was introducing myself as like, cool. Hey, I'm Greg from Akash, and they're like, oh, you're intersection of DePIN and AI. They know about Filecoin. We're talking about the legislators, the people that make policy. Yeah. So this thing is spreading more than you know, and that I call product market fit and policy as well, because crypto goes beyond just users, right? Yeah. So it's amazing to see that word getting popular now.
That's awesome. Harry, any insights?
I'd +1 to the privacy point. Specifically, I think you can get it in 3 ways. You can get it at the hardware level. You can get it at the just making secure enclaves, etc. You can get it at the kind of, I guess, like physical level, where if a device is on-prem somewhere, then you trust it. You kind of solve it through centralization. Obviously, that doesn't work in our space. I mean, you can get it at the kind of cryptographic or statistical level, but that usually comes with model performance trade-offs, and a lot of the technology is kind of underdeveloped there. So I think for like true enterprise adoption, which when I hear the word enterprise, I always think of like a bank or a hospital. I think it's not like
the hardest ones.
Yeah, it's. I think we need to either get hardware which deals with the kind of concerns they have around privacy in a more effective way. I think there's been some work to that end with TEs, etc., but there's still, in my opinion, not secure enough for the use case to work. And then on the other side, there's the kind of cryptographic or statistical approaches. I think the statistical ones, like the pure statistical ones, like differential privacy and stuff, they're just too hard to reason about for like a normal person. You need like a fucking degree in maths to like understand it. And then like the cryptographic ones also need a degree in maths, but I think they're probably more promising, but even slower, so not really practicable right now. I think solving one of those dimensions would vastly improve the chances of getting a kind of bank using DePIN.
Awesome. And Charles, I mean, you're very entrenched in the Filecoin ecosystem, so maybe you can give a Filecoin view as well. Like, obviously, we want to connect Filecoin and decentralized storage into these new workloads. We'd love to get your perspective on how we can get there faster.
Yeah, the interesting part is like there's more users than I was expecting, to be honest with you. So like after we launching the mainnet, we started have so many providers. We get more and more demands from communities. So there's challenges and opportunities there. So we offer the computing power to the institutions, like a university. We talk to the University of Montreal and also about some confidential computing department. They are very interested about the project, and actually they're already using the solutions. Nice. And another part is about some traditional demands. I will have people like who you want to using the edge computing resources for the website hosting, and they wanted to use it to for something interesting like gaming And also, like we found that there's a native Web3 native demands. So, for example, Arlio, they launching their testnet a few days ago, and a lot of people wanted to using our container solutions directly to get access from computing resource to doing those validator and proving
for
work.
the L2s. So basically L2s, or?
Yeah, so Alio is ZK, Alio, because so the funny part, like we actually already started competing with AWS and Google somehow, not the full solution, but on Web3, we definitely like have in strong positions competing with them, because so now they needed to buy credits to using on AWS and Google to get a light instance to running the GPU to doing the validation accelerations. But if you using our solutions, about 70% cheaper. And I would say like those demands increasing. And because we are Web3 native solutions, people easy to getting adoption about like using the very nature, right? Focus the repo code and start doing the mining stuff or proving stuff, and also about the storage side, IPFS natively like archived by Filecoin. Everything is so nature. So we are seeing, and also there was a lot of AI agent companies. So I would probably like I would deliver a pitch this afternoon about the AI agent. So AI agent is a booming market.
You mean like smart agents, or?
Yeah, AI agent, automatic response agent. That's a huge market. I say like trends like the deployment from the AI agent deployment is a large amount is through the cloud. But those agents they don't really need to be like on the centralized cloud. It can be on edge cloud environment, which is more closer to your user, right? The latencies, everything.
Yeah.
We have users. I have had a lot of users strongly ask us to support their development in the Asia region. That's part of actually related to your work because of bandwidth. In Asia region, bandwidth latency is very important.
Yeah, it's very poor. Yeah.
So we get so many demands. The issue now, or the challenge now, is like there's a lot of tools and the work need to develop on the storage side, and the bandwidth side, and the computing side. So what the customer needs is not just one single tool, computing or bandwidth. They want an entire tool side. So,
okay.
So if you're thinking about...
They want a solution. They want a like, fully
exactly.
integrated solution.
So that's why we need to working closely with the Filecoin as a large storage solutions, and some middle layer to provide the hot storage. Currently, we are using our own solution, IPFS, but we are really interested to say, like, I know like lots of Filecoin teams and also your teams
that's right.
working on the layer 2 hot storage. So we need to get all the tools. Yeah. This is not a one single team effort. We need a multi-team, multi-project working together to make it happen. But the demand is huge. I saw it.
I think this is great. I mean, basically what we're hearing is, one, there's multiple solutions that are being built addressing different parts of the stack, basically, right? At the end, core and combination. And we need to bridge these solutions all together because combined they form a more compelling alternative to what the cloud providers are currently offering. Look, we could continue for a much longer time because I actually really enjoy this conversation because I'm hearing so many good snippets here that are so important that a lot of investors don't necessarily get because they will talk to one person and they hear like one piece of the pie, but in general, it's like once you pull everything together and you hear the demand from different directions, you clearly can see there's a need, there's a demand. Maybe a last question for whoever, I'm not going to go around, but you can chime in. Is there any recommendations that any of you have to the community, to the ecosystem? Is getting recorded and streamed to our community members for them to better participate in bringing compute and storage together that you would recommend for them to work on? The builders, but also the users. Any recommendations that you have that you can send out to our community?
Yeah, so Akash is a community of about 500 contributors, right? It's a fully open source system. Every aspect of Akash is done in the public. There is an incredible fund, public goods fund for anyone to participate, right? So now we have researchers from University of Texas, MIT, University of Illinois, Campaign, all working on interesting problems, be it on a verification, or be it on like reputation systems, or be it on like there's even a proposal to work on quantum, right? So we have a wide range of like proposals. So if you feel like you see a gap in Akash network, or you feel like you can add something valuable, there is a sustainable way to do that. So please, reach out to me, Greg Osuri on Twitter, Greg Osuri on Telegram as well, GREGOSURI, and I can direct you to the resources, or you can go directly to Akash.network, forum.akash.network, where you can post an idea or a proposal, and people are very, very receptive and responsive. So yeah, we welcome open participation. That's how Akash grows, and we love to see more.
Nice. All right.
I think just from our side, it's the best thing you can do right now, and maybe generalizing across all our projects, is don't always go through the standardized pathway of like, hey, this is what's already inbuilt, that's already what we have integrated maybe 5, 10 years ago. I want to do it the best way possible, and sometimes best way is nowadays is going it through the DePIN path. And that's what I would encourage everyone, like, go ahead, try out, participate in the community. I think what's super cool about communities today across the DePIN project is you can get direct support from the developers straight away. You don't need to wait for a feature for ages to come. You go chat with the developer, hey, this is what I want to use it for. And you'll get a response in half an hour, a day, and it will be implemented. And that's where we see so much growth, so much opportunities for Titan Network as well. Both community who supply the resources and community that build on top. The active participation is what gets us way, way better and way faster time. We're still growing projects with a lot of focus on our early community adopters, so that's where just bring something that you need is far beyond support that the DePIN ecosystem need right now.
Awesome. Charles, you want to, or Harry?
Yeah, I'd just say that we work kind of informally with a lot of people on the research front, particularly on the kind of deterministic compiler stack, and also on the decentralized optimization of machine learning models. On the latter point, we'll be at ICML in Vienna in the next couple of weeks, which is one of the world's leading machine learning research conferences. If you're there, we'll be hosting a dinner. Happy to speak about all things kind of machine learning, and specifically decentralized machine learning.
Awesome.
For me, like for Swan projects, like we're more interested to working with the Filecoin ecosystem partners, because like we come from Filecoin, and we're still looking for better storage solutions from different teams, from Filecoin colleagues, and also like currently like we are also looking for the people who are building the new markets. So basically, we have a ZK market available. We have machine learning market available. So probably we're welcome to people like Titan can building some CDN or traffic market. So basically, we are called for market builders. So a market builder will consume the resource on the network, and we are going to publish a standard of the computing providers. So it's an Ethereum account-based computing provider, open source, open standard. So anybody who have ideas can building on top of the standard, and they get access to different resources, and we are allocation different incentive plans for market builders.
Where did they go? To the Swan?
Yeah.
Swan.io or Swan?
We have a dev ground, GitHub, Swan,
gotcha.
swanchan.io is the
Swan
places you can find all the resources. And on the GitHub, there was a dev ground system. By the way, for Filecoin people, you are pretty much familiar, because everything is so similar to Filecoin.
That's right. That's right. All right. Well, with that, thank you very much. I know this is a little bit longer, but like I said, I enjoyed all the feedback and the real use cases that you guys are working on, and it's amazing to see like all the progress that we've made. So with that, thank you very much. If you have any questions for them, they will be available here after the chat, and hope to see you at the next Filecoin Dev Summit. Thank you.
Thank you a lot.